Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Service Years as a Strategy to Expand Access to After School. My name is Alexis Steinitz, and I'm the Senior Director of Field Outreach for the After School Alliance, and we're so excited to talk to you about service and service years and after school programs. As you can see at the bottom of the page, we have a poll just to get a sense of how familiar you are with national service programs. And it sounds like we have, or looks like we have a wide range of experiences with service years. So we hope that this will be a helpful webinar for you. Just a couple of quick housekeeping tips. If you're experiencing delays with the system, please try closing out other programs that are running on your computer. And if you have a question or want to comment and interact with other people that are participating on this webinar, please use the chat feature there. And it's exciting to see all of you that have filled out where you're from. It looks like we have a wide range of people from across the country. So to kick us off, I'm going to turn our webinar over to my colleague, Jen Reinhardt, our Senior Vice President of Policy and Research, to offer a few words of welcome. Jen?
Hi, everyone. We're excited to have you all join us today. Today is actually a unique after-school celebration as well. It's what we call 3 to 6 Day, which is held every year on March 26th, or 3-2-6, also aligns with the 3 to 6 hours that after-school programs are so vital for. It's a day of sharing personal stories and images of all that after-school programs have to offer. So I invite you to check out our Facebook page to see some of the great sharing that's currently underway, and certainly invite you all to contribute to that sharing as well. I think it's a great way to kind of line up this webinar as well, that we could organize this to coincide with this day of sharing and really hopefully bring some of the service stories into the mix for 3 to 6 Day today. So on behalf of the After School Alliance, I want to welcome you to this joint webinar with the Service Year Alliance. We're really excited to partner with them in encouraging more after school and summer learning programs to work with Service Year members. Service year programs like AmeriCorps and Vista can play a really important role in supporting after-school and summer programs by helping build capacity and providing regular volunteers that can really complement what your regular staff are doing on a day-to-day basis. Today, you'll learn more about how to bring service year program members into your program, and you'll also get a chance to hear from a former AmeriCorps Vista member and an organization that currently hosts national service members. So we're glad you could join us. I'm really excited to learn more about this work myself, and I'm going to turn things back over to Alexis.
Great. Thanks, Jen. So to get started today, I just want to introduce the speakers that we have on our call. Joining us from the Service Year Alliance is Brooke Bonet, Director of Program Development. And as a member of the Service Year Alliance's growth team, Brooke works with organizations to develop strategies to replicate, scale, and develop new service year models. The growth team at the Service Year Alliance is striving to increase the number of service year opportunities to 100,000 annually and 1 million within a generation. So you're all part of this process today. Previously, Brooke worked at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, where she launched the Promise Zone initiative, bringing more than 13 federal agencies together with local leaders to address priorities in 22 urban, rural, and tribal high-poverty communities. Her work was recognized as a 2017 Next Gen Courageous Champion finalist. And she did also serve as a teacher through Teach for America in Baltimore, where she did her service year. So we're excited to welcome Brooke to today's webinar. We also have joining us Andrew Newman, who's the Vista Director at the Maryland Out of School Time Network. Andrew was born and raised in Washington, D.C., and he has spent time working with several nonprofit organizations in the D.C. and Baltimore regions, and has a history of volunteerism both abroad and domestically. So Andrew's managed to leverage what he's learned and experienced in the field to successfully lead a statewide AmeriCorps Vista program that's focused on building capacity for out-of-school time organizations. And Andrew himself is an AmeriCorps Vista alum, having held a position as a resource developer and communications specialist for the Greater Baltimore Urban League in 2015. And then finally joining us, we have Bernard Raming, who's the former Vista with the Oregon Ask Network in Oregon. Originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Bernard moved to Portland at the start of 2018 to pursue his master's in community psychology at Concordia University. His career to date has been focused on underserved and marginalized populations through various nonprofit organizations, and he served for a year as a Vista placed through the Afterschool Alliance at the Oregon Ask Network. Following his year of service, he's remained at Oregon Ask as the Community Research and Engagement Coordinator. So I'm excited to hear from all three of them as they share information about service years and how you can incorporate that into an after-school program. So why are we having this webinar today? Well, in short, we think that offering service years and partnering with organizations that provide service years can provide a variety of opportunities to after-school and summer learning programs. So as we know, based on our research that we've done through our America After 3 p.m. report, that there is tremendous demand for after-school programs. More youth than ever are participating in an after-school program, about 10.2 million according to the last time we studied this. But for every child that's in a program, there are two waiting to get in. And there's a variety of reasons why that's the case, including capacity of programs to be able to support more students. Service year programs can help with some of these factors. So moving on to our next slide. Who is currently using service years and after-school programming? Well, there's a lot of organizations, as you can see from the slide here, that use service years. Like I said, we here at the Afterschool Alliance host a program that places AmeriCorps Vista members at statewide after-school networks to help build capacity statewide for after-school programs. United Way's, Boys and Girls Clubs, 4-H's, YMCA's, and YWCA's, all national programs, use AmeriCorps members and other service year volunteers in their programs, as do smaller programs such as Higher Achievement or Aspire After School Learning or the Maryland Multicultural Youth Center. There's probably national service and other service year members working in after-school programs in your community as well. So one of the things that we feel that that a service year program can do for after-school programs is help with some of the outcomes that you can see here on the screen. And who doesn't want to be able to increase their program capacity? Service year programs can allow you to add some additional human capital to your program. While service year members can't replace your staff, they can provide a complement to your staff and help support some of the initiatives that you might be working on or some of the programs that you might be trying to launch in your after-school program. Service years can also help to expand the reach and the number of students that you're serving because you'll be able to bring in some additional volunteers to help with providing programming in at your after-school program or providing some additional support for capacity building. You can add many more kids and many more families to your program. They also help to strengthen partnerships. You don't necessarily have to be the one that provides the service year members for your program. You can work with other organizations in your community that might have service year members that are available for you to be able to bring into your after-school program. And we'll talk a little bit about the ways that you can partner with others in your community to make this happen. It allows you to build deeper relationships with students because you have the potential for more people to be volunteering and working in your after-school program. It allows for more hands-on time with students that can help lead to better outcomes. And it also can help create a community talent pipeline. Oftentimes, people that participate in service year programs are recent college graduates or people that are thinking about potentially taking on a career in education or working with youth or in youth development. By bringing in service year members, you have the opportunity to show them what it's like to work in a summer learning program or an after-school program and help develop the future leaders of these programs and possibly people that might be interested in taking on a role within your organization. Additionally, kids who grow up seeing service year volunteers in their programs see this as an opportunity and a way for them to give back to their communities. And hopefully we can create a cycle where students that have worked with service year members are then thinking about perhaps doing that on their own in the future. So I'd like to turn the webinar over now to one of the former Vista members that we've had through the After School Alliance, Bernard, to talk a little bit about his experiences in Oregon and how that helped shape what he's doing now in his future career. So Bernard, Can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Sure. Can everybody hear me? So yeah, I was a former Vista with Oregon the Oregon After School Network, and I also had a unique placement that I was also with Black Male Achievement, which is a program out of the city of Portland's Office of Equity and Human Rights. And so I was shared to kind of half time, which is really cool for me because I was new to Portland and new to the city, and I had really come from my master's in community psychology, and this gave me a really good way to kind of learn the state of Oregon as well as the city of Oregon. And I love my time so much that I continued on with Oregon as now the Community Research and Engagement Coordinator, where I'm doing a lot of the same things I was doing at the Vista. And I'm also continuing at Concordia University, where I'm a student, I'm a tutor, I'm a research assistant, a teaching assistant, and teaching the class. So I'm trying to do a lot, and I love my years at Vista. And a lot of things that Alexa was talking about, really applied to me, where at Oregon the After School Network, they had a lot of great programs going on. But as a Vista, I was able to kind of come in there and help increase their capacity. So some of the programs I worked on with them was like Zero Robotics. So they do this, it's a summer program out of MIT, like a computer programming, and I was able to be the state coordinator for that and help recruit programs across the state, lead the activities during the summer, as well as kind of be like that connection from the programs to the state lead to MIT in Boston and to NASA. Another program we did was the Access and Equity Research project, and that was started by a former Vista in my position before me, who wanted to go out and ask programs what are some of the barriers and access issues with after school, and that led to like a 3-year statewide research program. And again, that couldn't have been done without like the help or support of Vistas. And lastly, I did this barbershop reading program that I started through the Black Male Achievement Initiative, and that was going out and trying to recruit barbershops and connect the libraries to barbershops and create a reading program that would use the barbershop as already like a Black space, and how to increase and promote reading with Black men and boys in the barbershop area, and then hopefully lead that and connect that to increased membership at the library as well as library usage. And so those are like really 3 examples of programs that those organizations could not have done without like my increased capacity, the way I can bring it in. But I just loved it because as a new, like I said, new to the state, I got to connect with people, programs. Oftentimes I connected with like an after school program that had AmeriCorps members. So I was always kind of cool to, when you were like talking to somebody like, oh, you're an AmeriCorps member, so am me. So that was always like a fun little connection. And then I've been maintaining those connections, so now formally and informally. So like I said, formally, continue on with Oregon Ask formally. Black Male Achievement, I'm going to become a steering committee member there, so I'll continue on with them in a formal capacity too. And so this really was just a great year for me that I now found like a new home in Portland, Oregon, that without maybe this year at Vista, it might have been a hard way to get connected to people. And I really appreciate and love my year. So yeah, I think that's kind of what my experience was about, and I think I'm going to stay on and answer questions as we go through this later.
Thank you so much, Bernard. So now you've heard the experience of somebody who has served as a service year member in an after-school setting. Now I want to turn our conversation over to a host organization. So Andrew, can you talk a little bit about what it's like to work with service year members through your time at MOST? Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Alexis, for the introduction. I really appreciate that. So let me just okay. I think I've got some slides here. All right, we'll start here. So just to get started, I want to introduce my organization, the Maryland Out of School Time Network. We are a statewide youth development organization that's dedicated to creating more and better opportunities for Maryland's young people as well as their families. So let's jump into my program a bit. So I've been the state director for this statewide program for about 2 years now, just over 2 years. Before that, I was a Vista member in it, as well as a Vista leader, which is a particular role that helps oversee and manage all the other Vistas in our program. So it was definitely a great pipeline to connect me further into the work and give me all the skills I needed to assist after school on a sort of a large scale, which has been a great experience. So at the moment, we're in our 7th year of operation. We have hosted approximately 99 full-year Vistas, 96 full-year Vistas at 41 distinct sites, different organizations throughout the state, which range from 4-H to higher achievement, as well as Boys and Girls Clubs, Girl Scouts, some of the bigger ones, as well as tons of other unique and diverse programs throughout 7 counties at this point. So currently we have 27 projects, and most as well, we've hosted Vistas at our site. So we're an intermediary organization, intermediary sponsor, so we sponsor AmeriCorps Vista projects partner sites. A little backtrack there. We also have a couple Vistas ourselves, and we have throughout our time serving as a sponsor, and they have really furthered our work, working on either special projects that don't have to do with our Vista work, as well as sort of the Vista leader to help coordinate and run the program with me. Our experience and both the experience of our partners has been excellent. I frequently have gotten testimony that says that having a Vista and a Vista project has been a life-changing experience for organizations as well as programs, as well as the members themselves and ultimately the beneficiaries of programs, the young people that are within these programs, which as a result of our work have either greatly expanded sort of participant rates as well as built better systems to manage those. And we've also had projects that can stem from curriculum development to resource development to entire innovative program piloting. Our main focuses are STEM as well as college and career readiness, eliminating childhood hunger through increasing number of meals served at out-of-school time programs, which would be after-school and summer programming, and also the supporting of innovative projects which expand access, improve quality, facilitate collaboration, create new initiatives for the programs we work with. Here are some pictures of our wonderful Vista members. On the right-hand side is some of our current members of our 27-strong cohort, and then on the left is our past summer associates. I see that a couple folks in the chat box are both intermediaries and then also host summer associates as well, which is a short-term version of the Vista sort of classification of AmeriCorps, which is generally defined by only being able to do indirect service capacity building, behind-the-scenes work to further the organization, whereas in the summer they can do that as well as hold direct service roles, which is more like your traditional AmeriCorps state or national member who are able to essentially be direct service providers, teach classes and the like. So it's important to think about those options. There are multiple options we can go into a little further. If you're going to have primarily direct service role, you're going to want to apply for an AmeriCorps state or national member. If you want more capacity building work, that would be a Vista, and then if you want something in between, there is the summer associate programs as well. Some of our outcomes that I've recorded of late. So over our 7 years of operation, Vista members have collectively raised, mostly through grants, but also through donations and fundraisers, approximately $700,000 in cash for our organizations. I think just this year alone, we've raised about well over $400,000. We've had a lot of success with grant writing this year. In addition to that, Vista members have leveraged and raised approximately $300,000 worth of in-kind resources, such as food, space, training, opportunities, other resources that help to either enrich the programming or to assist the organization in other ways. Other recent great outcomes were a number of pilot programs have been implemented through Vista projects at our partner organizations, such as a middle school pilot of a high school-based coding, actually there's some errors there, high school-based coding program, as well as a health leadership college and career readiness pipeline program through Johns Hopkins, as well as creation of what's known as a STEAM Center, which is kind of like a rec center, but for STEM and arts at Lakeland Elementary, a public school in Baltimore City. And the design and launch of an entire intermediate organization known as Maryland Mentor, which most currently is partnering with. We're sort of incubating them for the time being. But essentially, Vista came before the executive director supported you at our office and assisted in even hiring her director and continues to work with them beyond her Vista year. In addition to this, yes, each year, including this last year, we had the largest we host a short-term summer associate Vista program, which I had spoken about. Most of them serve as summer camp counselors. A lot of them were college students that were sort of in between their school year, and they were able to get some money for summer as well as scholarships at the end of the year, but we can talk more about the benefits of serving as Vista at another time. So one other thing there was supposed to be a contact slide on there. So if you would like to know more about hosting a Vista member at one of your sites, you can contact your local state CNCS office. There's one for each state. So if you either go to cncs.org or .gov, or you go to vista.gov, you can search for your state office and their contact info. And then if you're looking more for a direct service role in AmeriCorps State National, I recommend that you reach out to the Governor's Office of Service and Volunteerism, or whatever sort of the title is for that within your state, and they usually handle AmeriCorps state grants. And that's actually all I have today. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And we'll get those links posted up here shortly in the chat box so that you can be able to find that information. And at the end of the webinar, we have the contact information for all of the speakers on today's webinar, so you can reach out to any one of us if you have some additional questions to follow up with. So now I'd like to turn the webinar over to Brooke to share a little bit about how you can be able to bring service year members to your program. You've heard about the need and how service year programs can help meet that. You've heard about what it's like as a service year member to work within an after-school program, and you've heard about what it's like now to work with service year members. So Brooke is going to tell you about how you can go about bringing those service year members into your site. So Brooke, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Alexis. We're so excited to be here today. Hopefully we've kind of whet your appetite to think about how you could bring this to your own programming, or how you could expand your own programming, and that's what I'm going to dive into now, is really the nuts and bolts of how to build a service year core member program into your existing after-school program. So I just wanted to quickly introduce our organization. Service Year Alliance is a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to make a year of paid full-time service, or what we call a service year, a common expectation and opportunity for all Americans. So what I really love about our organization is that we work in partnership. So we're looking for the hardest, the toughest challenges out there across the nation, and thinking about where service years and young Americans can come and play a role in solving those challenges and contributing and being part of that. Because Alexis said earlier, I came to this work from originally doing a service year in Baltimore City, seeing a lot of folks from Baltimore on the call today, including Andrew, and excited about that. I taught middle school for 2 years in Baltimore City, and then eventually found myself helping to establish a Vista program across the country through the Promise Zones Initiative, which was an Obama initiative to work with 22 low-income rural, tribal, and urban communities as they tried to bring together education, healthcare, employment opportunities, all of these pieces. And what I found is that these Vistas were the glue. They were the ones who were connecting the organizations that had been, working on these sticky issues for a long, long time. But these young people were coming in, and they were connecting the dots and finding solutions for things. And so Service Year Alliance has only been around a few years now, and this new position came up around the Director of Program Development to try and find ways to make it easier for other programs other organizations to try and add the service year component. And so it kind of all came together for me. That's what I get to do every day, is work with programs and on these issues to figure out ways to make it easier to start a service year program. I want to back up a little bit and just give you background of how we define what a service year is. So you hear the term national service and service year used pretty interchangeably. We think of service years as kind of a larger umbrella, including national service. So national service could be military, public, civilian service, and then you might hear the term civilian national service, which think about kind of doing a year or two of service. Think about programs like AmeriCorps or Vista. We think that those programs are part of that umbrella, and then there are other ways as well to be able to have a service year program that may not involve being an AmeriCorps program. There's a lot of interest for young people to do an AmeriCorps program or to do a year of service, and right now there's not the funding available for all of those people that want to serve, and so we're trying to find ways to be able to expand that umbrella as well. So when you think about this, think about the Corporation for National Community Service, which is the federal agency that runs the AmeriCorps and Senior Corps and Vista programs, and then think about other ways that this funding can come to play, whether it's Department of Education funding or other federal grants, thinking about state programs that exist or state funding streams, private foundations, corporate donations, other ways that you can be building out support to build your own service year program. So Alexis really built out the case of what the need is for after-school opportunities. We know that there's more demand than there are programs right now. I want to step back and think about service years more broadly in the education space. So about half of the current service years that are out there are in the education space, and we know that about 12,000 schools across the country that have someone who's in service right now. But when you step back and think about the scheme of things, there are about 98,000 public schools across the country, so only about 10% are being served through service years and national service. So seems like that's a big opportunity gap there in a way that we can start filling the needs of young people across this country in school, and then thinking about out of school and after school opportunities as well. So that's where we need you all. We don't run programs. We can't do this by ourselves, and so we're trying to make it easier for you to be able to identify what's going on in your communities, where you have a need, and think about how service years can come into play and be able to support that as well. And Alexis just posted up there the link to this data as well, so you have it. So how do you get started? That's what I'm going to dive into. Hopefully this isn't too weedy, and a companion piece to the new guide that we put together. So we spent the last 2 years listening to after-school programs that had service years, getting a sense of what were the pieces that they had to go through in this process, and how do we put that all on paper and make it easier for other programs to be able to pick this up and run with it and not, start from scratch. This work was supported by the Mott Foundation, so we're really grateful for their support along the way in this process and their expertise. And we're going to walk through this new toolkit that is being released, the Service Years as a Strategy to Expand Access to After-School Programs. And we'll bring up a window in a moment where you can download that resource and be able to use it in your communities. One thing I'll step back and say, I might not be able to answer questions on the spot, but I am looking at the chat window, so as you have questions and comments and things that come to mind, I'd love to have those pop up in that chat window. So please feel free as I'm saying something to make a comment, a thought, a question, and we're going to have plenty of time at the end to be able to dive into those. Okay, so the toolkit. In our toolkit, we put together 7 steps that it takes to be able to create a service year program, and we'll walk through each of those steps briefly today, and then you can use the toolkit to be able to see all the templates and everything that we put together to make this easier. So we start with the need in the community, understanding what it is that core members would do to be able to address that need in your community, and then thinking about how can you actually turn this into reality and build a case and get everything lined up to be able to launch your program. So I'm going to walk through each of these steps in a little bit more detail. So step 1 is to get in the service year mindset. So you're already starting to do that of just understanding what a service year is and isn't. But in step 1, we have a companion piece called the Creating a Service Year Program. It's another guide that's available on our website, and Alexis is going to post up that link for you, and we'll have it available at the end too if you don't catch it right there. We encourage you to start there, to read through this resource. It has a lot of tools and templates that can give you the background on what a service year program is and what the process it takes to build one out. It's, we see these as companion pieces really working closely together. I want to break down some myths about service years. So first of all, how long is a service year? It's a little confusing because service year is in the title, but think about service years anywhere from 10 months to a 2-year term. You heard Andrew talk about summer associates and shorter positions as well. AmeriCorps runs other programs that are shorter than doing a full year of service, and those are great entry points to being able to think about doing service as well. We consider it kind of this longer-term engagement of at least 10 months. They're always paid positions. These aren't volunteer positions where someone's not getting paid. We believe that really levels the playing field, that everyone has access to be able to do these programs without having to get support somewhere else. That the funding comes from a variety of sources. So even for AmeriCorps programs, they're expecting that you're going to have some skin in the game, that you're going to have other resources as well, but thinking about this as a web of braided together resources to be able to support these programs. And this isn't about replacing regular employees. It's not about cheap labor, but it really is adding to your program and doing something different. And so that's the way that you should approach it. Question for you all is, what other misconceptions or what other ways do you define what a service year is? Feel free to use the chat box if you have other myths or misconceptions that you think are out there, or other things that you think are important for defining what you know about service years. So I'm going to transition into step 2, which is identifying the needs. So rather than starting with what a service year member or members could do, we want you to ask yourself and your stakeholders, what's going on in your community with youth and families in your community, and take that broad lens. Are there specific unmet needs within your community or your program that needs to be addressed? And so you'll see a few questions that we put here. How many children are enrolled in after-school programs? How many would you like to have the capacity to enroll? What have you heard in your community about what is most needed during after-school hours? Is there a certain kind of programming that's missing? Is there a gap between what is needed and what's currently provided, and how could you close that gap? And then finally, how can a service year program support or enhance the role and the youth outcomes you work to achieve? So it's easy to kind of jump into already like having those ideas of what core members can do, but we really encourage you to step back a little bit and think about what the needs are and dream big. This is kind of the dream phase of saying this is where we have gaps, how things are going on. There might be data points that you already have, or ones that you don't have right now and you want to gather to be able to make this assessment and really think about what are the gaps that are currently going on. And I'll say this could be a formal assessment process that you've already done or that you want to do. It could be community feedback sessions. You could have a PTA meeting or other opportunities to be able to hear feedback from the community or data that you already have on hand. So after you've done step 2, you can jump over to step 3, and this is determining your goals, so thinking about what you want to achieve with the addition of a service to your program. So how will it address that unmet need? So we've named this is the problem in our community, or within our program, this is the gap that we have. Here's what this future state would look like if we solved for that problem. So this is like Stephen Covey, start with the end in mind. Dreaming, and I want you to dream big. Don't think about money, don't think about limited capacity and resources, but to think about what is it in that future, what's our vision of what could be possible if we solve for that unmet need. And at this point, you're not thinking too much about the details of the service year program. You're just thinking about what that end goal and that end vision is. So some of your programs probably have a logic model or a theory of change, or maybe that just sounds like really scary terminology. We put together a theory of change in the toolkit to give you an example of different ways you could think about after school and service years coming together. And when I look at this, when I think about the determine your goals step of the process, I'm looking at the right-hand side at impact and then output and outcomes. So you kind of have what the needs are in your community, have the results, and then you start filling in this middle part of thinking about what the interventions look like. What is it that core members could actually do to help you get to that dream state, to that impact. So once you open up the toolkit, you'll be able to see this theory of change in more details. I know it's very small here, and the beauty of having a PDF document is you can hit the zoom function and zoom in and take a look at all of the details that are included here as well. I want to explain two terms that you'll see on that theory of change, the capacity building and direct service. So capacity building service years are those that are thinking about kind of the behind-the-scenes things of an organization, so enhancing the capacity of an organization. Sometimes you might hear indirect service in the national service space. So that's one kind of service. So you can see here in the picture, it's the core member working for the after-school organization who then is serving after-school participants. And so their role is more behind the scenes. The other types of service is direct service, where they're directly working with young people in the program. And so you can see here that the core member has that direct contact with after-school participants. In this step, we're not asking you to determine what the intervention needs to look like, what core members need to be doing. Are they doing capacity building? Are they doing direct service? But I want to show you some outcomes that we've aligned with capacity building or direct service, and so just giving you that background information first. So in the toolkit, you'll see a list of all these outcomes. It's actually a pretty long list that's included here. And when you're doing this visioning stage, this determining your goal, step 3, you can start to pinpoint what are the things that we really want to see happen. We want to increase our academic achievement or our grades, and we really think of the after-school space as the way that we're going to do this. We want to improve our socio-emotional development of our young people, and so this is where we're going to focus in. We'd love to see more parent engagement or community engagement. We want to think about what next steps there are for our young people as they're finishing up their K-12 education or pre-K-12 education. And so as you're filling in that theory of change for your own needs, think about what are those end goals that you want to see. And we just, in talking to a lot of programs, these are the ones that bubbled up. You might have something different, but hopefully these are a good starting point that we've done some of the work for you as well. I will say that programs don't necessarily need to be one or the other. They don't have to be only direct service, working with young people, or only capacity building, doing that behind-the-scenes work. You could have a hybrid model where your core members are maybe spending the school time hours doing some of that capacity building behind-the-scenes work that you need to get done, writing grant applications, building out community partnerships, and then when the school day ends, they're doing some direct service work from 3 to 6 and doing both as well. You don't have to choose one or the other. So there's lots of resources in the toolkit that you'll see that have hyperlinks to be able to build out this outcome piece and output piece of building your program model. Cool. All right, so step 4, so there are 7 steps, so we're in step 4. There's a lot within this bucket. This is really where you're making decisions about your program structure. So you've laid out what you want to achieve. You're starting to think about filling in that part of the theory of change on the right-hand side of what's the tail end of what we want to get done, what are the outputs or outcomes that we'd like to be able to measure. And the structure of the program just adds some kind of that nuance that you're going to need to think about. And you heard Andrew talk about this for their programming. I think Reinhardt, you can kind of get a sense of that, of what's going on in Oregon as well. So there's 4 main pieces here that I want to quickly address. The first part, I think, is kind of the part we were all looking for, right? Is what is it that core members are going to do? How are they going to address that need in your community? So I think that's really fun. What we typically advise programs to do is to think about the end result that they want to see, and then think about what interventions could actually help to get there. And so looking at, are there any evidence-based programs that don't have to relate to a service year at all? They can just do programs that currently exist out there that you could adopt that model and try and replicate it in your community. it could be, and in the toolkit on pages 21 through 24, you'll see that there's a long list of capacity building activities and then direct service activities. So you'll be able to make some of those connection points and fill in what is it that core members could do, what's the evidence behind this of why this might be a good strategy for us to take. The next piece there is a big, big question. So do you want to create a new program, or would you like to host or be an expansion site for an existing program? So it could be that you're starting something that's never been done before, and that you're really building out a brand new thing. It could be that there's already an intermediary like Andrew's organization, Most Plays in Maryland, that they place members throughout the state, and that you're joining in and being part of that and wanting to do one of those host sites. It could be that there's a big national program, like you think of a city year or other programs that you want to serve as an expansion site and bring them into your program and form a partnership with them. So there's lots of ways to think about doing this. It could be some mix of different elements of this too. It may be something that's brand spanking new, but an intermediary would help you develop a position description and work to place members there. And the least thing that you can do is to inform the young people that you work with about service years and make sure that they know that this is an opportunity for them to do a gap year, maybe before they start college and they're trying to figure out what they want to do next, or a gap year after college while they're still wanting to go do something hands-on and direct as well. There are questions around if really plays off of how your current program is probably structured. Are you in one location in a single site, or are you serving multiple different locations? It could be that you want to expand out, that right now you're in one single site and you're thinking about moving to being in multiple locations, but that's going to affect how your program is structured as well and what kind of activities core members are doing, what kind of supervision they're going to need, all of those things around placement sites and structure. And then the last piece here is core members serving part-time or full-time. At Service Year Alliance, we focus mostly on full-time service. We think that that's part of having a really robust experience is doing a full-time service year. But as you've heard, there are part-time programs that AmeriCorps supports, as well as summer associate positions. So, you need to look at what's best for your organization and for what your needs are, whether that looks like something more full-time or you're looking at something part-time as well. If any questions came in, okay. All right, so that brings us to step 5. I'll breeze through steps 5 and 6 because I think they're pretty straightforward, and the toolkit does a really great job of being able to explain these when you take a look at that position description that's shown there on the right more closely. For us, a well-defined position description is critical for having a successful program. It sets clear expectations, it aligns with the program needs, and makes sure that you're getting that best suited candidate. At a minimum, your position description should define the duties and responsibilities, qualifications, and skills gained for potential core members. And this really is like that starting point of laying this out clearly that can help you think about who you're going to recruit, what kind of background that they need to have, what kind of training and professional development you're going to need to provide if you start laying this out clearly. So pointing it out there, it's in the toolkit. You should take a closer look. So we get to step 6. Thanks everybody for patience as I walk through all this detail. Now you've got the basic elements of what we call a service year program design. And so now you can start to build support for this idea. So in step 6, you're making the case. You're developing a list of stakeholders. So who is it that is going to be impacted or need to be influential in a decision maker around adding a service year program? You need to get, parents, community members involved. You have a board that you need to get engaged. How much has your leadership been involved? All of those types of stakeholder groups that you need to get engaged. And then thinking about what messaging is going to resonate with those various groups. So I would lay out, here's are these various stakeholders that I have, and then here's the message that's going to resonate with them. and then go out and make your pitch, make your case to get them on board with it. So here's an example broadly of making the case for service years and after school. In the toolkit, you'll see that there's more resource links so you can start building out that bigger case for what the need is for your specific community and more broadly. So despite the prevalence of after-school programs throughout our communities, according to Afterschool Alliance and the America After 3 p.m. report, there remains a staggering 19.4 million kids who would be enrolled in after school if it were available to them. So making that broad case, but you want to do that more specifically for your program. So step 7, this is a really large section of our toolkit. It's really about taking your design and building a plan to execute on it. So it includes a bunch of different elements, fundraising and budgeting, creating a timeline to launch your program, thinking about how you're going to support your core members from that very first day when they're onboarding to thinking about transition planning and supporting them in what they're going to do next around career and education, and then what kind of staffing and supervision that they're going to need to be able to be successful in their role. In the toolkit, you'll find a lot of templates and resources, as well as back to that original guide, the Creating a Service Year toolkit that we mentioned and we posted up, and it'll be in the resources, has a lot of templates to make this easier for you. I'll point out one of the graphics that we put together specifically thinking about after school that you see up there is the timeline. And so usually for what we found talking to programs is that they're going to want their service year to launch with the beginning of the school year. And so you're starting to work yourself backwards of how much time is it going to take me to get to being able to launch my program and have core members start. So it's going to take a couple, 1-2 months, depending on how many ideas you already have in place to design that program, to go through steps 1 through 5 and lay this out there. And then you're going to need some time to be able to secure funding and to start planning all these implementation pieces. It may be that you've got a funding source in mind. Maybe you just got a 21st century CCLC grant and that you think you can build it into that, or you're applying for one and you want to make it part of that. It could be that you're thinking about other funding that you've got to make use of. So that could be a faster process or a slower process if you're just starting out. And then you've got to have a few months to be able to recruit your core members. Earlier is better with that, obviously, and to be able to select them and work with host sites so that they're prepared to work with core members throughout the year. So you'll see, it does take some runway to be able to get this off the ground and running. So I see some questions starting to come in around the budgeting piece and the fundraising piece. And so I think about this as a 2-step process. So first of all, that you're thinking about your budget and you're thinking about it for your program model and what you've built out. So you can always tweak this based on real-life realities and what's going on the ground, but there are some key elements that you're thinking about that go into a budget. So your core member living allowance, you can put an estimated number in there for now. I'll talk in a moment about Vista and AmeriCorps State and National, and those programs have some guidance around what the living allowance can be. Let's throw out a number here of $15,000 just to have a starting point, and that might be tweaked based on what program structure and funding that you're looking to receive. Thinking about other benefits a core member would receive, so thinking about health care, child care, other things that you are doing to support those core members. Training and professional development. If they're located in one location, it's a lot easier to bring them together and do training. If they're located in multiple places, you might have some of those costs of travel to bring them together as well. And is this done in-house? Is this something that you're going to have to build out from scratch? And the ever important food to have at trainings and make sure that you put some money aside for that, of what this could look like in the dream state. And then are there any other special equipment materials, a common uniform or t-shirt that you want them all to wear, any other resources that they're going to need that's different than what you use day to day. So once you have that draft budget in place and you're thinking about, okay, here's what it's basically going to take for what we want to do, then you can start thinking about the fundraising strategy and The next slide, I'll talk about AmeriCorps funding a little bit. This could be starting to think about, other federal funding sources, state and local government funding, private philanthropic funding, and then also program site fees. It might be that you run your own kind of intermediate model where host sites are pitching in and maybe supporting 50-50 or that they're paying 30% of the cost of what it is to have a core member. So this varies a lot by program. There's not one set kind of pie chart of where the funding comes from, but we would encourage programs to diversify their funding, and that you'll see that from CNCS as well, that's various kind of funding sources coming into play. All right, so Liz, I see your question here, and I'll answer it with this next piece here. This isn't in the toolkit, but I wanted to highlight with what Andrew started introducing as well. Two of the big funding sources come from the Corporation for National Community Service, so AmeriCorps Vista, and then AmeriCorps State and National Grants. So AmeriCorps Vista, you apply directly through CNCS, and these are for capacity building activities. So this is 12 months of full-time service, and CNCS is covering either 100% of the core members' living allowance, or you could apply in a way where you do a cost share with CNCS, and then it may be that they pay for pay for one member, and then you're paying fully for another member, or maybe they're sharing it, that it's a 50-50 of how much you're supporting the Vista member or members as well. They just moved to a new process where there's an online application for a concept paper that's due quarterly. And so if you click on the link there, you'll see that the deadlines are coming up. There's one coming up April 1st, so probably too soon unless you have everything already laid out for this, but there's another one coming up in July. And so they're moving to that model of feedback. As I lost connection. Okay, I think it's coming back up again, so I will keep talking. And there, it's back on the screen. Awesome. The second type of funding from CNCS, awesome, thank you, Jennifer, is AmeriCorps State and National Grant funding. And so this is for direct or capacity building activities. The service requirement for full-time, or for the service requirement is 10 to 12 months. It could be part-time or full-time service requirements. And there is a scale, kind of a sliding scale over time of how much AmeriCorps provides, but you do need to provide matching funding for an AmeriCorps program from the beginning. And the way to apply for this, as Andrew said, is that you work through, every state has a state service commission that is, at the state level, not CNCS, and you'd be reaching out to your state commission. I know some folks are on the line today from state commissions. Thank you for being here. And finding out what their timeline looks like in their process for state applications. And they all run competitive and formula fund grants. And then there's a national competition as well that kind of goes to the state offices and submits nationally if you're working across multiple states as well. So I wanted to just give you some basics there. If you go on each of those websites, you're going to find more information, but thought that was helpful. The question came in is, how competitive is the funding? It's competitive. In the past, Vista was more of a process that was on a rolling basis, that you could reach out and they would work with you to build out a Vista position. It's just been this year that they've moved into this more quarterly system with concept papers and whatnot. If you can bring funding to the table, it helps, right, for Vista. That cost share is easier to get than doing something where you're fully expecting Vista to be able to pay the living allowance. So that's helpful if you can bring money to the table. And then for AmeriCorps, there is a requirement that you've got that match funding in place. There's a lot of interest in commissions across the country that are working specifically on after school and knowing that this is a huge need across the country. And they're wanting to work with you. They're wanting to help you try and figure out how to navigate this process. We haven't seen big jumps in the federal budget for AmeriCorps and for Vista the last few years, but this is a high need area that both programs are looking to be able to fund. Cool. So how to get started is our last slide here. So the moment you've been waiting for, so serviceyear.org/education is where you can download this resource. In a moment, I'm going to walk you through that website, and then if you directly want to download the After-School Toolkit, it's serviceyear.org/afterschool. We'll be bringing up that resource as well. And let me just give you a quick run through of that webpage. Okay, so hopefully that's coming up for people. So this is our new webpage, serviceyear.org/education. We've just built this out in the, hold on a second, I want to make sure people can see it. Looks like it's not coming across for people. Let me just make sure I can bring it up. If not, what we'll do is just have everybody go to serviceyear.org/education. Here we go. All right, is that working better for folks that they can see it? Awesome. Okay, I'll shrink that down. So here's our new webpage for education. We've spent a lot of time building out education resources recently. So you can see here some of the content we've already talked about. There's a contact us on the right-hand side here in orange. So if you've got questions about how to build out your model as you go through these resources, please be in touch with us. So click that Get Started and fill out the Contact Us. And we're a pretty small team here and trying to be very responsive to the needs of organizations. One of the resources I want to highlight is we've done a lot of videos that I think are really compelling around what it's like to do a year of service, and we've pulled up ones around education that would be a good fit as you're building your case, as you're trying to understand more about what service years can do in your community. So take a look. There's 4 that are highlighted there, and then a link for more stories where you can go and find all of our videos on service years. And then resources for in-school and out-of-school strategies. So you can see there a general resource on service years as a strategy to improve education outcomes, the after-school program toolkit that I just ran through, and then a funding resources for education service year programs. So that has more information on CNCS funding streams, but then also thinking more broadly about funding resources for these programs. Cool. And then there's the Contact Us. There's a couple more resources at the bottom here. A webinar that we just did recently at the end of last year on K-12 education outcomes, and then that Creating a Service Year Program guide that I talked about as the companion piece, and then a white paper piece that we did as well. And this is where the webinar will be after the fact. Okay. So that's the resources that are available. I'd love to be able to spend the remaining time that we have answering questions for me and Alexis and Bernard and Andrew and Jen. So please use the chat box there and throw us questions. I'll throw it back over to Alexis.
Great. Thanks, Brooke. This is a really exciting resource, and we're so glad that you were able to share it. Just as a quick note for those of you on the webinar, you can find the resources linked down here as well as scattered throughout the chat feature. So I actually have a couple of questions just to get us kicked off, although I see Liz Forrester also just has another question that I think is a good one, which is, do service year members find their own housing, or does the host organization need to help? I know that's a challenge that many sites have had. So, Brooke, what's your response there?
Yeah, it's definitely an issue that we are talking about here and working with programs to figure out. So core members find their own housing. It's not something that host organizations are required to help with, but we know especially in rural locations that it can be a challenge. What I've seen some programs that choose to do something around this, of feeling like that there is a challenge, is to really reach out to their wider community to see if there's, an extra room for rent, if there's kind of some champions that want to find other ways to be able to support service, that it can be a way that they're, helping to navigate and just see some options that are out there. We do see some programs actually provide housing and then take it out of the living stipend so that the core members are basically kind of paying rent to be able to live in maybe like a group house kind of situation. But knowing that it's a challenge in rural locations, especially for the scarcity piece, in urban locations because of what the cost of housing might look like as well. There are a few commissions and cities that have done some really interesting things working with developers to be able to identify, kind of set-asides in new apartment buildings and whatnot for people who are doing service years. I know that's happened in Philadelphia and in Baltimore, so I'd love to see more of that as well. But it's definitely a challenge and one we're aware of. You're not required to find housing for your core members. So.
Thanks, Brooke. I also just want to let webinar attendees know that also included in the webinar and the web resources link is a post-webinar survey. So when you have a moment, if you could just fill that out and give us a little bit of feedback as to how you found these tools useful or helpful, or what you might be thinking about in terms of starting a service year program with your after-school program, it would be great to hear your feedback. So I actually have a question for Andrew. How did most decide to structure your national service program? Why did you choose to utilize Vista members and focus on the areas that you're currently working on?
Sure. So perhaps my executive director could speak a little bit better towards that because she actually started it. It began through a relationship that was created with the state director at the time. And they essentially just propositioned our organization with, hey, would you like to host a couple Vistas? So we started about 5 members, all of which were in office. And then based on sort of the success of that and seeing that there was interest, a wider interest across Maryland, we continue to expand it and develop the partnership model that we've created today. Some of the reasons that I see great benefit in our model is in part because of the cohort structure that has been created as a result of all of our partner sites. So by the virtue of the fact that we all have very similar aims, very similar organizations, and goals for these organizations that at least fit into the Vista considerations, we find that there's a wealth of resources amongst partner sites that we connect our Vistas to each other, and that we also connect our sites with each other to learn and grow and collaborate on new projects and try out new sort of best practices as well. So we find the collaborative approach to learning and developing as a cohort is an excellent way to run a program.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andrew. Now, Bernard, as a service year member, you have a unique experience, or you do have a unique experience having served at an organization as a service year member and now currently working there. Can you tell us a little bit about what made your service year a great year for you, and offer some suggestions perhaps on ways that organizations that might be considering working with service year members can make the experience a fantastic experience for the individual that might be at their site?
Sure. So I think one of the best things was that they've clearly had many Vistas before me, and so I think they've really learned how to help support Vistas, and because of just a lot of contact with other staff members or other, or like there's like a director. It's really great to be like, how things going, I think even like the housing question, so like, you know, that's just one issue of life if you're moving to a whole new area. So they were really supportive of just understanding that you're new to this city, state, and how can we help you just, you know, beyond just like the day-to-day, like 9-to-5 work day. That was actually like the biggest help in just both organizations, Black Male Achievement and Oregon Ask, were really just great at helping me get established and connected and feeling comfortable in the new city. So, you know, if I needed anything, you know, they would be like, oh, you know, I have dreadlocks, and so, you know, for Black Male Achievement, you know, I actually reach out to them to where can I get my locks twisted and stuff. So it's just really like those little things that you can really rely on as like a new network and support group.
Fantastic. Andrew, actually, can you respond to that from the host side, what it is that you do at your site to make it a great year for members?
I sure can. So one of the best parts of being a host site is that you get a Vista leader slot to fill, either one, potentially two if you continue to grow. And our Vista leaders primarily are charged with organizing in-service trainings, ISTs, essentially we have monthly meetings, and we, based on sort of the needs expressed by the Vista group, will arrange for trainings on both hard and soft skills. So it can be stuff like grant writing training, or it can be something like networking or communications for nonprofits or for volunteer recruitment. Additionally, with both Vista Leader and myself, we provide support day-to-day for Vistas. If they have any issue, they can call us anytime. We either work with them on the Vista end, or we work with their supervisors to make the experience better. Our main goal is to not have any early exits from the program. We want everyone to complete their year, get everything that they want out of it. And we also want the projects and the host sites to be very satisfied as well. So we put a lot of daily support as well as these monthly trainings, and continue to foster sort of that learning community as well as the cohort model to share best practices.
Great, thank you. So, Brooke, another question for you. There seems to be a lot of information that one needs to gather and a lot of steps that are part of the application process to be able to bring on a service year member. What is the general timeline for that? How much time should a program spend on trying to prepare for a project and apply for a project?
Thanks, Alexis. I think that it varies by what you're trying to do. I would look back to that timeline piece, but having some sense of what your program design looks like. Are you trying to do indirect or capacity building work that maybe Vista is a good option for you? That concept paper isn't a super high hurdle to be able to just turn in the concept paper, so that's something that might be an easier lift. If you're trying to build out a direct service program and you're looking for AmeriCorps state national funding, that takes some more work to be able to put that together. And there is kind of a one application timeline for the year, but now is a good time that you could start building that out so that you could apply for this next 2020 competition to start members in the fall of 2020, and so it'd be a good time to start building that out now. I think it just depends how much. I'm going to assume that everybody else has full plates already, and so this is a side project that you'd be working on to build out, and so how much time do you have to dedicate to pulling this together? I think you could have a lot of those steps already in mind and really spend a good day with, either on your own or with a few trusted colleagues to pull together what your program model looks like, test that with some outside stakeholders, and then start to pull together the pieces around implementation about what your budget going to look like, what's your fundraising strategy and whatnot.
Fantastic. And so then one final question that I have is, how can you find out where there are other service year members in your community?
Sure. So we run a program called Impact Communities, where we're working with about 10 different cities and rural areas and states across the country, trying to pull that together so that there is more coordination. I think what Andrew has seen with most around after school, really building those connection points is huge, and we want to see that across the service year field. And so we have impact communities that I can post up the link to of where they are. But I would reach out to the, look on the website for the State Service Commission, because you'll see a list of the programs in the state. CNCS also has a nice PDF, kind of 2-pagers on every state, and thinking about, and saying what programs exist in that state. There might not be a really strong existing network already, but it could be something informal that you're starting to bring together core members for. What we'd love to see is doing trainings together, instead of everybody doing this on their own. How do you bring it together and do one training on career transitions or resume writing or some of these pieces? And so it may be something that's already in play, or maybe something that is more new, and you could help feed that.
Well, thank you, Brooke, and thank you to everyone that was on the webinar today and for participating. I've posted the contact information here for our speakers this afternoon, so please feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any additional questions. Brooke, Andrew, and Bernard, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and talking about how to bring service year members into your after-school program. And I hope that we've managed to inspire all of you that are participating